right, so for today, we're just going to do a quick video where I am covering your research argument essay. I introduced this in some classes and I did it in some detail, but I'm going to go over it in the most detail that you need this time so that because it's going to be a couple weeks before we meet, I guess, again, because this week we are not meeting, we are having our conferences. If you have not signed up for a conference, please hurry up and do so. The times are filling up. I have some sporadic times on Tuesday, mostly in the morning available, and then Thursday, all I have left is in the morning. The entire afternoon is full. So if you have not signed up for your conference yet, then make sure that you do that. And that was the noise of my Alexa letting me know that my Amazon package has arrived. I'm just doing this as a quick video, so I'm doing it in my living room instead of locking the dogs out. So if you hear weird dog noises, that is what's happening. So again, make sure you've signed up for that particular, your 15-minute individual conference. Should be virtually painless. Just FYI, if you don't specify how you're meeting, I gave you the option to do WebEx if you really need to, but if you don't say one way or another, I'm expecting you to show up in person. And if you miss that, there's not going to really be a time to reschedule. If there happens to be some open spots, you may be able to, but make sure that you show up on time for your conference. That's very important. So today, let's just go over this research argument essay assignment. This is where you're actually answering your question. So we're finally building up to what we've been doing all semester, is building towards answering that research question. And it's going to be due on Friday, April 23rd. So that is the Friday before the last week of class. So you'll have that, it'll be due, then we'll have one more week of class where we discuss revision and things like that, and then you'll have exams after that, the week after that. You will be revising this particular paper. This is the one that's going to go in your final portfolio, which is going to be your final exam for the class. So you're not actually going to have a test, kind of like we didn't have a test for the midterm, but you'll be turning in a revised version of this paper along with a personal essay, which is something we will discuss on the last week of class. So don't worry about it right now. But anyways, due Friday the 23rd, your peer review is going to be, you'll turn that rough draft in on that Monday, the 19th. You'll be turning into the Dropbox and to the discussion board. We'll be doing peer review both places. Hopefully we'll be doing the peer review in class, assuming we are in class, and we're going to do it for both particular classes, even though y'all haven't actually gotten to do it in class yet because the classroom has been closed. So hopefully we'll be able to do it for this particular paper. So this one is 7 pages. Yes, this is the big guy. It's about 1,750 words. That's about 250 words double-spaced on a page. So 7 pages, and it is worth 20% of your final grade. So it is, out of all the papers, this is the one that's worth the most. Here are some different dates that you can mark down as far as what we're going to be doing in class. You will be turning in a thesis statement to me in a couple of weeks, so make sure that you are starting to work on that. We will be working on it in class as well. We'll be doing some other things to work on the paper in class, and then we'll have, of course, peer review hopefully in class. And you'll have to bring the whole actual paper with you, and we'll exchange those. You'll actually get to experience peer review. Hopefully, we will see. If everyone can stay healthy, that will possibly happen. And then your paper is actually due the 23rd. So here are the objectives. Student will complete this assignment by writing an essay that makes an original argument that answers the research question that you have already developed in research. So you developed it in your topic essay, you researched it for your literature review, now you're actually going to answer the question. So you should have a thesis statement that is the basic enthymematic form, which is the claim because reasons format. Now, this is a very particular requirement for this paper. So your claim, and I'm going to give you an example of this later on so you can actually see it a little bit better, because sometimes just explaining it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I've got an example that you can look at, kind of like I did with your literature review. But the claim is going to be the answer to your actual question. It's going to be your argument, and then you have the reasons that you've chosen to support your argument. Then you'll support the argument presented in the thesis by synthesizing at least 5 sources that student has found. So you can use the ones that you found in your literature review. You did 3 for that. If you don't want to use those, you don't have to. You're not required to use the same 3 sources and then just add to it. If you may have found that the sources weren't helpful, or one of them wasn't, or 2 of them weren't, or, it just kind of depends. So if they worked for you and they help you, then I would use those. If they didn't, you'll just have to find more, because you've got to find 2 more anyways for your, you have to have at least 5 for this particular paper. And make sure that you have evaluated those as credible or otherwise worthy of attention. So in other words, they are going to work for an academic paper. Then you summarize, paraphrase, and quote from those sources adequately to complete the task. And the task is what? Answering your research question. So here are your related learning outcomes, so make sure that you read those. So the purpose of this particular assignment is really just for you to answer your research question, but it also is helping you enter into a scholarly conversation. In other words, you are becoming part of the research that you are reading. So you have an opinion, you have an argument that goes along with other people's arguments on your particular topic. And so now you are becoming part of the conversation that you have been researching all this time. So by applying the skills in research, source evaluation, and synthesis that you have been practicing through the term, you will contribute to an existing conversation by presenting your own original argument. That argument will speak to the existing conversation. It's supposed to be existing, not exiting. By using sources to support your argument, either as evidence, by extending or modifying your source's arguments, or by refuting the source's arguments. The most important thing to remember as you work on this essay is you cannot simply parrot the information or arguments you find in the sources. In other words, I don't want to see big blocks of quotes and paraphrase material from your sources. If I wanted to read those sources, I would go read those sources. What I want is you to present your unique argument and then use the sources to support your argument. The sources don't make the argument. You make the argument. You present the argument. The sources just support your point of view. So your essay must be a persuasive argument that allows you as a young scholar to enter and contribute to the ongoing conversation on your topic. So you're going to write a thesis-driven essay that makes an argument answering your research question. And you've got to have 5 sources. So here are some steps to, you're going to review all your notes, all your research, then you're going to reread. I'm sure everyone's going to reread portions of the textbook that you've already read so many times because you love it so much. But if nothing else, review the PowerPoints and the lessons that go over those pieces of the textbook to prepare you for writing your paper. After that thorough preparation, you are going to write your essay. So your essay should have and it also says to remember to outline, draft, and revise. We're going to be doing some of these different things in your classes as well. I'm probably going to get you to give me kind of a topic outline, not a full outline of your paper, but in other words, the topics that you're going to cover in each body paragraph, just to kind of give me an overview to show that you kind of know where you're going with your argument. So you should have a focused introduction that introduces your topic and your thesis statement that answers your research question and takes the form of claim because reason. And again, this is a requirement for this essay. You're going to be turning this in to me in a couple of weeks so I can see and make sure that you have actually put this in the form that it's supposed to be in. Then beyond that, you will have body paragraphs that support your thesis with adequate and appropriate synthesis of at least 5 sources. So you're going to be using summary, paraphrase, and quotation, and we talked about this in class this past week about the difference between those things and how you shouldn't rely on quotes that much. You should be mostly paraphrasing the material, in other words, putting it in your own words, because that shows that you understand the material and that you're actually engaging with it. So you're working with it. You're not just pulling chunks out and saying, look, I got this, they said this. But remember, for each one of your quotes, paraphrases, any outside material, you will have, obviously, as I've said many times, you will have your in-text or parenthetical citations in there. That is definitely a requirement. But you're not just going to put that information in there and just kind of leave it there. For every piece of outside information, I want you to tell me, why is it important? Why did you choose it? Now, you're not going to say, I chose this quote because... But you can say things like, this supports the argument because the author agrees Because, you can show, you're pretty much telling me not only this is a good piece of information, why is it important? How does it support the argument? Why did you choose it? Why is it there? So you're going to put that analysis after every piece of outside information. I don't want to see just a piece of information, just a quote in there with no explanation. That's just parroting the information. That's just copying from the source. That's not engaging with the material, and that's not the point of the point of the assignment is to present your argument, explain your argument, and just use those pieces of outside information to support your argument. But most of the writing is going to be you analyzing it, you telling me how it supports the argument. Also, one of your body paragraphs, it says may need, I would suggest doing this, raise the possible counter argument and defeat it. In other words, you are going to present the other side of the argument. So you are arguing, you're spending 7 pages arguing this one side of the argument. Present the other side, show, although many people agree with this argument, some people think blah, blah, blah. And then you go on to refute that. In other words, you go on to prove why your argument is a better argument, why their argument isn't as strong as yours. And then you will have a conclusion that reiterates your thesis for the reader in different words and then sums up everything that you've said, and also gives like a call to action and things like that we talked about in the conclusion video a couple of weeks ago, the conclusion lesson. Your essay should not simply just summarize the sources. I don't need a summary of the sources. That's what you did for the lit review. I need you to use the sources now. You're not telling me what they say. You're showing me how they support your argument. Should not just string together information and substitute for a sustained argument. In other words, you're not just putting a bunch of quotes and paraphrases together and being like, there's my argument. No, that's stuff from the sources. What's your argument? Don't stray too far from the topic in order to complete the assignment. Remember, you should be able to stay focused on your particular argument and the subtopics that go within that argument. You don't want to, and it's easy to go on tangents. I know I do it all the time, but it's important to stay focused as you can on your actual argument and the subtopics that relate directly back to your argument. So, when you're looking at your sources, you have to have 5 sources. Of the 5 sources you are required to cite in your essay, at least 2 must be scholarly, in other words, something from the library. At least 1 must be a peer-reviewed journal article. So that is something you should have from your literature review. And so hopefully those particular sources are going to work for your final research paper. None of them may be self-published or vanity press sources. In other words, self-published books, blogs, Wikipedia, vanity press. I know a lot of people don't understand what that is. If you say, for example, you write a book and you send it out to publishing houses and you want to get it published, but no one wants to publish it. There are such things called vanity presses where you can send them your material and you pay them and they will publish it for you. So, in other words, people don't really care what the material is because they're getting the money. They're going to get sales from it, but they're also getting money from you because you're paying them to publish your book. So it's not something that's going to be thoroughly vetted and edited like it would be if it was from a regular, like a university press. So anything that's self-published, like blogs and Wikipedia and things like that anybody can add to that's not really edited that much, you don't want to use that. Because those, if you find something that you really think needs to be done, then possibly, but let me know ahead of time. None should be tertiary sources, in other words, Wikipedia, book reviews. So remember, primary sources are the actual research. Secondary sources talk about that research, and you should have your sources related as closely to your primary research as possible. And my dog is just wandering around shaking his head and rattling his collar. Yes, I'm talking about you. All of your sources must be credible. We've got the CRAP test, and that handout is on D2L. If you have any questions about whether or not a source is credible, you can ask me after you go through that CRAP test. If you're still not sure, then let me know. Now, you may cite more than 5 sources if you want to, if you think that it's necessary. But remember, focus on the quality of the sources, not the quantity of the sources. Because you're not going to get extra credit for having 15 sources. That's, if you do that, then you're not going to be writing anything. You're just going to be putting a bunch of quotes in there. So I would much rather you have 5 good sources than 10 okay sources. So focus on finding the best 5 sources you can. If you need to go over, if you need to put 6 or 7, that's okay. If you feel like it's necessary. But don't go over the top with that. And then we got your rhetorical situation. So think about, you're writing this for submission to a journal. So these journals that you're reading, think about writing for them. Think about presenting the paper in front of your professors and your students. Think of it that way. That's your rhetorical situation. In other words, how are you presenting the argument? Who is the argument going to? What language do you need to use? Who do you need to write it for? Of course, you need a works cited page because you will be quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing at least 5 sources. So make sure that you format that in the proper MLA. I've gotten a lot of those that are it's kind of a mess. Please make sure that you format in MLA style. It's not the most important part of the assignment, but it's part of the assignment. So put forth that effort. And we will talk a little bit more about that as we go on too. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask me. And this is your rubric, so make sure that you look over this and you can see all the things that I'm going to be grading. And as always, the topic, the closer to the top something is, the more points or stronger weight of it's worth. So in other words, if you're writing to interpret, analyze, and synthesize, that's more important than if you get to the bottom and the style, grammar, mechanics. That's not going to be, you want to carefully edit and revise and everything like that, but it's more important that you have a strong thesis and that you're using your sources well to answer an argument that you present. That's going to be the most important part. So that is just an overview with a little more detail of your assignment. So make sure that you look through that. This particular assignment sheet is in D2L. And again, if you have not signed up for your conference yet, make sure that you do that, and also complete your weekly quiz. It'll just cover, I'm just going to ask a couple questions about this particular assignment, so it's not going to be anything too crazy. You just have to turn something in for your second day of attendance for each week. And if you have any other questions, please, as always, let me know.